we're going to be talking about significant others, peers, and relationships. Everything was just perfection. I still came home that night and my mind said, he did all of that just to be nice. It was right then where I literally spoke out loud, Satan, I am not going to allow you to take this from me. And I started praying, but I don't feel like she showed me what it was like to be a woman, to like bask in my femininity. I don't know how to be a girl. Stop taking things so personally. Everyone's actions, it does not have anything to do with me, but everything to do with them. You went 3 days without talking to me, and I don't like that. And if you do it again, you're probably going to end up blocked. This is all over the place. Hey Vickies, and welcome to another episode of It's Time to Go to Therapy. So the last time we went to therapy, we were talking about basically how it was that I was brought up. A lot of my mama trauma issues came up. We were talking about forgiving my past, forgiving my mother, and basically just learning that so many things that I dealt with in my past and how they're showing up in my actions today, and like as a trauma response and all of those things. That's what we talked about in our last episode. Today, she basically told me that we're going to be talking about significant others, peers, and relationships. And the reason we ended up getting into that is because when we ended our last session, she was like, so with all of that being said, who is your safe space? Who is your support system? And I was like, God. And she was like, that's good and all, but God wants you to have community. So we need to talk about who your community is. And I don't want to say that like I don't have friends, because I definitely have friends. I feel like I definitely have a community. But with the trauma that I do have, it is very hard for me to believe that I have a solid foundation of people that truly care for me, people that truly love me. And it's hard for me to trust and believe that. So yeah, it's hard for people to ask me who my community is and for me to say it without thinking about it. So we're talking about that today. And another thing that I know that we're talking about, and I am just so nervous because I know she's about to get me all the way together. So y'all, I went on a date on Thursday, and the date went so well on Thursday, it ran into Friday. And then we're still talking today. And let me tell you something. I know that when I was younger and I thought about marriage, everybody, well, I don't want to say everybody, but many people think about marriage and they just think about the beautiful side of it, right? Just having a companion and having a life partner to do life with. But no one thinks about the healing and the work that has to take place for you to have a successful marriage. Because I know that many of y'all have heard people say like marriage is like a mirror and it exposes the issues that you have within yourself and the issues that you need to work on. It's like a reflection of you. And not saying that I'm going to marry this dude, like we never know, but just getting into a relationship period exposes so much about you and exposes so much about you and the work that you have yet to do. And it is wild. And I say all that because, so we went on a date on Thursday and it was the best date, right? The actions were there, the words were there, everything was just perfection. And I still came home that night and my mind said, he did all of that just to be nice. And in that moment, I was just like, what is wrong with you? Like, what do you mean he did all of that to be nice? And it was right then where I literally spoke out loud, Satan, I am not going to allow you to take this from me. And I started praying. And then I also, with the prayer, I texted my therapist immediately. And I was like, hey, just to take a note, I had this date, still having negative thoughts about it. We're going to have to process this because I don't know what, well, I do know what's going on. It always stems back to the trauma of if my own mom doesn't want me and doesn't love me, how in the world am I supposed to ever believe any of these strangers will? The person who gave birth to me doesn't give a damn about me. Why do I believe this random man is going to, right? So anyway, I text her about it. And so she was like, okay, we're definitely going to process that. So that's going to be interesting. But I'm proud of myself that instead of like beating myself up about it, I was aware of it and I caught myself because I was like, I do desire a relationship. I do desire marriage. But in that moment, I realized you are going to sabotage every great thing that comes to you if you act like this. Because what more could that man have done? Like literally nothing. Everything was perfect. So why would I still come home and say he just did that to be nice? There's nothing. It was just wild to see that. he was just doing that to be nice. That means that that man would literally spend his whole time in this relationship trying to prove himself to me, and nobody deserves that. So yeah, I was like, yeah, babe, we need to heal. We need to figure this out. We need to heal so we can have the marriage and the relationship that we deserve, because we do deserve. So I'm excited. I'm kind of nervous because you really just don't know what's going to come from it. It's definitely one of those moments where I'm like, I didn't really want to go because I don't feel like crying. But I'm trying to change my perspective around it. It's not just crying, but it's cleansing. And I feel like it's releasing more so. So I'm just like, change your perspective. Change your perspective. And I'm just hoping to be helping somebody with this, because I know I'm not the only one. There's so much trauma inside of me that it just feels so weird, first of all, to be doing this and documenting it on camera. And then second of all, to be like hearing myself talk about these things out loud, not knowing if that man is probably going to watch this. But like I said, it was just so many things that was just so weird. Like even us leading up into the date, I haven't been on a real date, y'all, in years. Like a real date in years. And this is going to sound so crazy, and I don't care. I am just being so vulnerable and so transparent with y'all. I had like a whole freaking mental breakdown on FaceTime with my friend, and I was trying to figure out why in the world am I going through a whole crisis right now. And long story short, it kind of boiled down to, I don't feel like I truly know how to be a woman. I don't feel like I truly know how to be a girl. My mom was an amazing mother, but I don't feel like she showed me what it was like to be a woman, to like bask in my femininity. And for me to like prepare to go on a date, I'm like, I don't know how to be a girl. I am like, I don't want to say I'm a homeboy because I'm not. I don't know how to explain it. Are y'all here with me? I'll hopefully know how to like process my thoughts after this. But it was just so many things that happened from Thursday until now where I'm just like, I cannot wait to talk to my therapist so we can process this together. So anyway, y'all, I will talk to y'all after therapy. Let's go. All right, y'all. So therapy is over. And when I tell you, I'm loving therapy so much. Like every single session, we're just getting closer and closer. And she's just starting to feel like my big sister. And I am just loving her for me. And don't y'all mind my lip. I bit my lip. And so just don't mind it. So like I told y'all earlier, we talked about basically just everything relationships. And so when we got in there, she was like, so I know that you texted me throughout the week and you told me about your little date and everything. But before we get into that, tell me about your first best friend, your first friendship, and then we'll go from there. And so I told her about my first childhood relationship. And long story short, I was telling her how I had this friendship and I said that she was my best friend. And once we got into college, it's like she got this boyfriend and she straight dipped. Like, it was wild. She straight dipped. There was no communication. There was no talk about we're not going to be friends anymore. There was no argument. There was nothing. There was no communication. We just stopped being friends. And I remember weeks, months later, whatever the case may be, I saw her at Target. And the way this girl looked at me as if she saw a ghost and dipped down an aisle. And I remember I was so upset. And I went home crying to my mama because I'm like, what did I do to her? How could she do me like this? Like, me and this girl was locked in, like went to prom together. This was my girl. This was my best friend. What did I do to her? Why is she treating me like this? Another one of those things when you hear people say you cannot expect you out of other people. I just couldn't grasp the thought of like, how could you treat me like this? Like, you are my best friend. Like, what the hell is going on? One of the things my therapist kept like challenging me on is what made her your best friend. And I was like, well, if I'm to be honest, when I was in high school and middle school, it was very easy to throw the word around to call somebody your best friend because you ain't been through life yet for real. So in my opinion, you were my best friend because we spent a lot of time together. We made each other laugh. We had a lot of things in common. And like, we just made each other's life fun, period. You're my best friend. But she was like, in retrospect, was she a best friend? And I'm just like, I mean, no, we didn't really do life together for real. So anyway, that was that friendship. And then she had also said something like, because I told her how that friendship, I didn't like the boyfriend that she was with. And she was like, why didn't you like her boyfriend? And I was like, well, because I felt like she was doing anything that her boyfriend wanted her to do, and like she was becoming this person that I never saw her to be. She met this man. It was like, I'm gonna do anything to keep this man. And I just saw her becoming this person I never knew her to be. And she was like, well, let's change the perspective. Was she becoming someone that you never knew her to be? Or was it just that you guys are in college and everybody is becoming? And I was just like, that's good. Everybody is just becoming. So like truly thinking back in retrospect, like she was just growing. I don't know. Like really just thinking about it. I don't know if it was even that she was growing into someone that she wasn't. Maybe it was just we were no longer under the shackles of our strict parents, and that we were truly just becoming and outgrowing one another. That's very possible. And then we got on to my other best friend that y'all hear me talk about often, where I always say like my two biggest traumas, my mama and this best friend that I tell y'all that straight ghosted me, see her at the gym, and all of these things. Y'all, I don't even remember all of the things that she has said, but long story short, she asked me, because I told her how all of that happened when she had blocked me on all of the platforms. And then literally like days later, I saw her again at the gym and she didn't speak or anything. And she was like, well, why didn't you speak? And I was like, well, I don't like confrontation. And I was just like, no, it is what it is. Like, she was the one that blocked me. It is what it is. And she was like, if I'm to be honest, that was you ducking at Target in the aisles. And I was like, well, what do you mean? Because I was like, what are you talking about? She said, if you called this girl a best friend, best friends are worth fighting for. In that moment you saw her, you didn't feel like that relationship was worth fighting for. So what in that relationship was happening that you must have had already been checked out? And I was like, wow, never even thought about it in that way. But I was like, if I'm to be honest, there was like so many moments in our relationship where there was just like a lot of mean girl moments where, you know how they always say there's a little honesty behind every, I'm just kidding. There was so many moments like that with us where I'm just like, that's just not really nice. Like, I'm a very emotional person, very in tune with my feelings, I want to talk about everything. And she was very avoidant, very not in tune with her feelings, didn't want to talk about her emotions. So we oftentimes just tend to clash. We just weren't a good clash when it came to friends. But I just always wanted to hold on to the friendship that we had. And it was funny because she did point that out. She said, in both of these relationships, I'm noticing that they both morphed into someone that you're saying that you did not recognize. And she was like, talk to me about that. And I was like, it's sounding like I wanted to hold on to a version of them because I didn't want to let it go. Because I feel like there was always some point in my life where I was experiencing some type of safe haven, some type of excitement, and I never wanted it to go. I don't know how to explain it. Anyway, she broke that down and that was good. But the biggest thing that I got out of all of that, this is all over the place. So the biggest thing I got out of this session was today, she said, out of all of the stories that you told me, I see that you have the history of making people's actions and making their behaviors about you. And I was like, what do you mean? And it's funny because like I've heard this said before, and I know that this is something that I've always struggled with, and I've always tried to keep myself, and I've always tried to remind myself of the way that that person treats you has nothing at all to do with you, but everything to do with them. You know what I mean? And she was like, the way that your mom treats you has nothing to do with you, your worth, your value. It has everything to do with her and her trauma. That friend that you had in high school and the way that she decided to leave that friendship without having a conversation, that has nothing to do with you. She simply cannot handle having hard conversations. The friendship that you had with this one girl that you're seeing in the gym that she does not want to talk about. Some people simply don't like to have hard conversations, and that is okay. She was like, you simply have to stop making people's actions about you. And it's funny, it is funny, and oh, how tables have turned. The friend that I see in the gym all the time that has hurt me the most, she always told me, stop taking things so personally. Stop taking things so personally. And basically that's what I was told today. everyone's actions. It does not have anything to do with me, but everything to do with them. I did not do anything. They are moving that way because of their own characteristics, their own trauma. It has everything to do with them. I did nothing to these people. I also told her about my last relationship that I was in, not the toxic one, but the one with the good guy. And we have broke that down and talked about it, y'all. It'd be so hard to be in therapy and to talk about things because, one, I'm not a good storyteller. And then two, I'd be like, long story short. But then it's like, if I do a long story short, I'm missing so many key pieces of the story. I know she just be like, girl, you said a lot and didn't tell me nothing at all. So this is why she just gonna have to pick for me because I don't know what to say. So she just picks and picks and picks until she finds the answers to everything. But once I told her about my past relationship, she confirmed that a lot of my initial reactions are out of a trauma response. And she just basically told me to challenge everything that comes up first. Like everything that comes up first in my mind, try to challenge that thought. And to go outside of my norm. And something that she said we're going to touch on and talk more on in our next session next week is because I told her, like, ideally when I get into my next relationship, I said, ideally, picture perfect, I want Monday through Friday for us to have a routine, and then the weekends we can be in the streets. And I was like, because if I'm to be honest, it was my routine that saved me. Like mentally, I was going through it. It was my routine that I built for myself Monday through Friday that saved my life. So I am so scared to ever derail from that, which is why, like, I will literally not go to family functions and do things if that means I have to skip my routine. And that's not good, but that's like the mentality behind it, is because like I need my routine. And so she was like, okay, we're going to talk about that because yeah. She was just like, we're going to talk about that more. Because I'm like, it was my routine that saved me. So long story short, she's like, this picture perfect idea of what love has to be and these images that I've curated in my head. She's like, baby, I'm gonna have to have you let that go. You're gonna have to let that go, because every single time you encounter a man and it doesn't equate to that image you have in your head, you're gonna sabotage it. And I'm like, damn, that's crazy, because I am. And I have, and I will. Aside of that, I told her about this man that I went on a date with. And one of the things that I brought up, and it's so funny because I told my best friend this and she literally told me, don't say that again. And I didn't see a problem with it, because I told this man, you went 3 days without talking to me and I don't like that. And if you do it again, you're probably going to end up blocked. Mind you, I don't see any problem with that. I saw it as me being very forward and just telling him what it was that I was and was not going to deal with. But I told my therapist that, and she was basically like, I see how you thought you were being forward and a good communicator. However, baby, that is a you problem and that's not a him problem. You guys should work towards what is going to work best for the relationship. And I was like, well, what was a better way for me to present that? And she was like, at the end of the day, you are the owner of your own triggers. And I was like, okay, well, what was a better way for me to present that? Because that was still going to be an issue. And she said, what did she say? She was like, well, hey, when we go long periods of time without talking, it makes me feel this way. So what are your intentions? Like, are we just casually dating, or what are we doing? So I can kind of wrap my head around what kind of communication we're needing. Something like that, where I was like, oh, so kind of like less aggressive. And she was like, So anyway, I thought that was funny. But she sent me this video that I'm going to go watch. It was something about calming your ego or something. I'm going to go home and watch that video, and then I'm going to pick up the camera and we're going to talk some more. So I'll talk to y'all later. So I've been in my car processing. I told you guys that she had sent me a video. It was actually called How to Work Through an Emotional Trigger, something like that. I'll put the video up here for you guys to go watch. It's just like a really short clip. But basically she talks about like 3 steps on how to work through an emotional trigger. The first step was to breathe. She's basically saying whenever you are emotionally triggered, something is happening within the nervous system where you need to just stop and breathe. Place your hand on your stomach. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, and exhale, 3, 2, 1. So that's the first step. And then the second step I thought was really good. It was to say something about practicing seeing your ego as an observer. And I'm going to try to say this in the way that she said it, but basically saying how using like abandonment as an example, if I'm texting my boo thing and he doesn't text me back immediately, instead of me saying in my mind and making up this narrative, he's not texting me back because he doesn't want me anymore. He's not texting me back because he's cheating on me. He's not texting me back because he's abandoning me. That is my ego speaking, and that is a trauma response. That is my past creeping up on me. That is not true. Allow that ego to be an observer. How did she say it? I'm not saying it right. Y'all are going to have to go watch the video. But she was saying something like, acknowledge that and say, thank you. But no, he's probably sleeping. There's a million other things that he could probably be doing. Allow your ego to just be an observer. However she said that. I might put a clip in here.
Practice witnessing the ego as an observer. So what do I mean by this? In the moment, so say for instance, I'm going to use this abandonment example. Say for instance, I'm not getting a response back from my partner. Longer time has passed between texts than I would like. So my mind starts spinning a story of, oh, it's because she's abandoning me in this moment. And that's what's causing that reaction. If I can teach myself to witness that story that my ego has told me, that old story of abandonment, really a million things my partner could be doing in that moment. Maybe she's busy, maybe she's in a meeting, maybe she's taking a bath, maybe she's sleeping. Not abandoning me at all. So if I can teach myself in that moment to see that story of abandonment as separate, to observe that story, that's what my ego is telling me. Oh, she's abandoning you in that moment. That's why I'm feeling hurt, devastated, angry, whatever I might be feeling. So the more we practice what we're hearing, that narrative, that story, what our ego is telling us, and separating, observing it, then over time, we get to show up in that moment and give ourselves a new choice, right? I may in that moment select a different narrative for what's happening as opposed to the one my ego is going to naturally offer, which is I'm being abandoned. I can now practice saying, okay, ego, thank you. I appreciate your attempt at protecting me in this moment, but in reality, my partner's not abandoning me. In reality, a million other things are probably happening in her world, and now I may choose to respond in a new way. Again, caveat here as all things, practice. This doesn't happen overnight. The more we observe our ego, the stories, what the narrative is that I'm assigning, or the meaning that I'm assigning to this event, that's my trigger, that's what's happening, the more I can practice separating myself up and making room for a new response.
The third thing is just understanding that your feelings are valid, practicing self-acceptance. I think a lot of us, and I have talked about this in like my first vlog, feeling like so many times along my life and my journey, I feel like my feelings have just been dismissed. My story has just been dismissed, where I don't even know half the time what my story is. And now I'm just coming to realization like, Kenzie, your feelings are valid. But now we're just cleaning up on these trauma responses that have formed in relation to that. But anywho, I'm just processing, y'all. It's the way that she got me together about telling that man that if you go days without texting me again, you will be blocked. And she was like, that's so unfair. And I was like, how is that unfair? I was just being forward. I ended up texting him that I was sorry, because I was like, I made a me problem, a you problem, and I can see now how that was unfair to you. Therapy is hard. Therapy is hard. Doing the work is hard, but I know that it's going to be so worth it. So anywho, I'll see y'all next time. I will see you guys next Thursday. Bye. Can I show my love for you?